We are going to cover sections 9 and 10, which subtraction and multiplication of decimals. We will also be looking at for the circumference of a circle. As we begin of decimals, when adding or subtracting decimals, it is important up the decimal points and place value. Those have to match. So for example, if I have, let's say, 0.14 and I want to add to it 2.39, I have to line up my ones place. The thing is, when you do these, look at the problem, put your decimal point for both, write your whole number to the left and your decimal value on the right. Another thing that you could consider doing when you're dealing with decimals and you're using your notebook, instead of having your notebook turned where the lines on the pages are left or right, turn your notebook so the spiral is at the top and you have vertical lines coming down, and that gives you the perfect divider lines to do place value. So really consider that. And if you've got your notebook in front of you now, just rotate your sheet of paper so your lines are vertical, going straight up and down, and you have all of the perfect lines for place value. So if I'm doing this particular addition problem and I've lined this up, what I would do is I would put a 0 here as a placeholder, and I would start with the rightmost place value to add. So we have 6 and 0, which would be 6. 9 plus 4 would give us 1 over. 3, 4, 5, bring down that decimal. 8, 10, carry your 1. 1 and 1 gives us 2. So our final answer would be 20 and read it as 536 and the place value is thousands. Let's say we're going to do a subtraction. If I have 9, I'm going to subtract 4.06. We've lined up the decimals, place values. I need to come here and add a 0 as a placeholder. I cannot subtract 6 from nothing. There's nothing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow. My 9 becomes an 8, and that 0 is going to become a 10. I can now subtract 6 from 10, which would leave me with 4. 0 from 8 is 8. 4 from 5 would leave me with 1. Nothing, 3. So I end up with 31 and 84 hundredths. If you have a problem that asks you to estimate an answer, if they give you a place value that they want you to round to, then feel free to do those estimation problems. In the examples that they give, they do not have a set rule that I find. So if in the workbook, if you're doing a problem and it does not ask you and tell you what to estimate, what to round it to prior to the addition and subtraction, then just focus on getting the exact answer for those questions. You will have word problems, application problems that you will be doing with these particular items. You may have something such as, let's say, gasoline was 4 and 139 thousandths per gallon one week and 4 and 287 thousandths gallon the next week. By how much did the price change? If you're finding, in this case, the price change, since we're doing a subtraction, We would put the larger value on top, which would be the 4 with the 287. I'm going to line up my decimals. The second one was the 4 with the 139. So we're going to write that. So as we do our subtraction at this point, we would go to subtract 9 from the 7, and we're going to have 7, and this becomes a 17. 9 from 17 would give us 8. 3 from 7 would leave us with 4. 1 from 2 would be 1. And then 4 from 4 would be 0. So this would be the increase for the change of the gas for that week. As we look at section 10 for multiplying decimals, you do not need to line up the decimals. When you are doing a multiplication, if I were to have, let's say, 23 and 6/10, and I'm multiplying it by 78 hundredths, I do not need, in this case, to line up the decimals. What I did was I put the most digits on the top and the fewer digits on the bottom. And then we're just going to multiply. So 8 times 6 would give us 48. 8 times 3 would be 24. Plus 4 is 28, carry your 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Plus 2 is 18. As we start on the second row with the 7, we would put in a 0 as a placeholder, and 7 times 6 would give us 42. 7 times 3, 21 plus 4 would give us 25. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 plus 2. Now we're going to add. 8 and 0 is 8. 2 and carry your 1. 8, 9. 9 and 5 is 14. 6, 7, 8. And then 1. Now, what we have to do with multiplication, at first, you just multiply as you would normally multiply. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come to the original problem and we're going to count how many numbers come after the decimal. We have 1, 2, since the decimal has 3 numbers to the right, in the final answer we start right and we move left 1, 2, 3 places, and then that is where we're going to put our decimal in the final answer. When you have a circle and you are asked to find the circumference of a circle, the circumference, in other words, is like the perimeter. It's the distance around. So it's like if you're going around the perimeter, the outside edge, where you add the length of all the sides. In this case, there are no straight edges to add, so we have a formula for circumference. The formula we use for circumference is either written as pi times diameter, or we can write it as 2 times pi times radius. So let's kind of have a little conversation about diameter and radius. The distance from side to side. So what I have in is the diameter. If you need to know the diameter, but you're given the radius, you just double the radius to get the diameter. If you are given the green as the radius, if you're given the diameter but you need the radius, you would take the diameter, cut it in half to get the radius. So if we have this problem and want to know, you're going to be asked two things, either the exact circumference or the estimated circumference. If you're asked for the exact circumference, they want you to literally use the pi symbol in the answer. On the computer, you'll find a button that has that symbol. So you're actually going to use the symbol. So if I were to give you a diameter of 10, if I were to say if the diameter equals 10, you would do for the circumference and the pi times diameter. If my diameter is 10, it will be 10 pi. If they want an approximate answer, with an approximate answer, they're going to want you to use 3.14 in the place of pi. If that's the case, for the approximate, we would do 10 times 3.14, and your 10 times 3.14 will give you 31.4. And that would ask for the approximate answer. So that's one thing to take note of, is if you're asked for exact or if you're asked for the approximate. Let's do one more example of that. A circle, and on this circle you're going to be given a radius. The radius is equal to 3. If we're finding the circumference and we were given the radius, we would use 2 times pi times radius, which is 2. The radius is 3, so 2 times 3 with the pi symbol. So you would use 6, the exact answer. If they want the approximate answer, do 6 times 3.1 for pi, and 6 times 3.14 would give us 18 and 84 hundredths. Be careful when you're doing word problems. Sometimes you will be asked to round your answer to a certain decimal place. Sometimes they use the wording for tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Sometimes they might just say 3 decimal places, 2 decimal places. They may tell you how far to round. So do make sure you're paying close attention to that. The other thing to pay close attention to is when you are working with decimals and you're asking for money. When you're dealing with money, you would round to the nearest cent. So let's do an example of that. What is the cost in dollars of 16.3 gallons of gas at $3.29 per gallon? So we want to find the total cost of 16 points at $3.29 per gallon. So if I'm calculating this, I could have 9 cents. I'm going to multiply that by 16.3. And notice, we do not have to line up those decimals. 3 times 9, 3 times 2 is 6. 6 and 2 would be 8. 3 times 3 is 9. Bring down a 0 to hold a place value. 6 times 9, 6 times 2 is 12. 12 and 5 would be 17. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19. Orders, 1 times 9 is 9. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. Now we're going to add 7, 8 and 4 gives us 12. 9 and 1 is 10. 9 and 7 is 16. 16 and 10 is 26. 10, 11, 12, 13. 3, 4, 5. So once you have done your calculation, let's then see we have 1, 2, 3 numbers that come after the decimal. So starting 3 places to the left. So that gives us 3, and we have a 6, 2. That's to round to is money. So if we have to round to the nearest cent, money goes 2 places. You look at after, and that 7 falls between 5 and 9. So that means our change is going to round up to 63 cents. And that is all of what we have in our sections 9 and 10.